I'm Garry DeWeese. I teach at Talbot School of Theology, and this is part of the Christian Apologetics or the Masters in Science and Religion program. And occasionally I teach a course for either of those programs. I grew up in a Christian family. I don't remember not believing in Jesus. Now, theologically, I know there was a point where I was regenerated, but I don't know when that was. When I was in junior high, I made up a date so I wouldn't get hassled at camp. but by God's grace, I don't know when that point was. I never had any real crisis of faith, and for that I thank God. My father worked for Boeing, so airplanes were a big part of my life as a child. And I went to the Air Force Academy intending to fly. About halfway through pilot training, I was injured, lost flying status, and then a couple years later was medically retired from the Air Force. And at that point went to seminary, at Dallas Seminary. Following that, went to France, where I taught Old Testament and Hebrew at the European Bible Institute, which is near Paris. Came back to Colorado, where I was a pastor, an associate pastor in Colorado Springs for about 8 years, and a senior pastor in Boulder, Colorado for 6 years. And towards the end of that time in Boulder, I began taking classes and then decided to enroll in a doctoral program in philosophy at CU Boulder. There are a lot of reasons for that, which I don't need to explain to you. I got the doctorate and believed that God wanted me to spend the rest of my active years, the rest of my abilities, helping future church leaders learn to discover, declare, and defend the truth. And after I graduated with a doctorate from CU, I taught there for a while, but then got a call from Talbot. Now, we lived at 8,500 feet in the Rockies, 30 minutes from Rocky Mountain National Park. I could leave my front door and within 10 minutes be in a national forest. If I headed due west, I'd cross one road in 2 miles, and it would take me 2.5 days to get to the next road through Indian Peaks Wilderness. I mean, that's where I'm from. That's me. So I didn't want to come to Los Angeles. But it's people like you. It's people like you that I knew were here, and there's a lot more future church leaders here than at the University of Colorado. So when I got the offer to come out here, I said, okay, Lord, I have to trust you for grace to put up with LA. But being here and teaching here has just been a joy. Now, my folks were both from small farming communities, although neither of their parents were farmers, but they were people that came from the land, if you will. They didn't come from big cities. And they were staunch Republicans. So am I. I'll let my true colors fly. But doing things like recycling before anybody knew what it was called was something that our family just did. Mom and Dad took us camping. They didn't like it, but that was something they thought we ought to do, my sister and I. And of course, they didn't have the right equipment to make it happy. But we spent a lot of time camping, and then after I got in junior high and high school, I started going out on my own with friends, climbing, hiking, backpacking, mountaineering, and have done that ever since. Growing on me during these years was an awareness of a greater sensitivity to the natural world. I grew up in a semi-rural area near Seattle, but I found that when I went out into the wild, into the wilderness areas, that I had a deeper sense of God's presence than anywhere except in a worship service. Now, I don't think that God was closer to me there. I mean, He's omnipresent after all. I'm a good enough theologian to know that. But my response to Him was different in the wild than it was in a suburban or an urban setting. And in recent years, as environmentalism, well, probably going back to 1970, 67 to 75 was when the environmental movement really was born. It pained me to see evangelical churches paying very little attention to that. It also pains me, by the way, to see them paying very little attention to aesthetics. Churches often are the crummiest looking buildings on the block. They shouldn't be. They should be beautiful. Because our our aesthetics ought to reflect the glory of God. But our sensitivity to the natural world is part of that. In recent years, especially since climate change has become a political issue, there's been a deep, as you all know, a deep political divide within the evangelical church. A lot of the so-called younger evangelicals are rejecting the notion that our faith has nothing to do with our relationship to the natural world. And a lot of others are saying, well, environmentalism is merely a political deal. It's a left-wing, it's a democratic thing. And if it's democratic, it's of the devil. I mean, I'm obviously caricaturing views, but this divide seems to me just to be wrong-headed. And so what I hope we can do tonight is avoid either extreme, tonight, tomorrow night, and Saturday, avoid either extreme. And what I hope to do is to guide you to an understanding of what an environmental ethic ought to be able to tell us, how it ought to be able to be grounded, what we ought to be able to say about principles guiding our interaction with the natural world. Tonight is going to be largely negative as we look at probably the 4 most prominent approaches to environmental ethics, and we'll find all of them wanting. Tomorrow night will be positive as we construct a theocentric environmental ethic based on a theology of creation and of humanity in creation. And then Saturday morning we'll look at different aspects of that. So that's what I hope we're going to do together. Because of this filming thing, I'll ask you to hold questions, and periodically we'll stop and take questions, but that'll make it easier for me to stay on track and not follow rabbit trails, if that's okay. That's not the way I usually like to teach. Some of you know me, but that's what we're going to do, okay? So, those of you that got the textbook, I hope you found Buma Predinger's book stimulating, interesting, well-written, the second edition. Those of you that didn't, this is the book. Stephen Buma Predinger teaches at Calvin College in Michigan, and I think this is pretty balanced, and it is, of all the books that are out there now about Christianity and creation care, this is probably one of the most balanced. The other articles are from a number of different sources. Many of them are collected in this anthology, which is about $75, so I decided I wouldn't make you buy this. But this is kind of a standard text for use in environmental ethics courses. Environmental Ethics and Anthology, edited by Andrew Light and Holmes Ralston. Here's what we're going to do, as I already alluded to. Tonight, the foundations, we'll talk something about meta-ethics because this is environmental ethics, and we need to put it in the context of approaches to ethics in general. And then we'll talk about approaches specifically to environmental ethics. Tomorrow, Friday night, we'll talk about the theology of creation and what it means to be stewards of creation. And I'll suggest to you that the concept of stewardship of creation involves both a royal duty and a priestly duty. Duties we owe to God with respect to creation, and we'll work that out biblically. On Saturday morning, we'll talk about a theology of place. And then we'll get into problems in politics. David Pelzer will be here. David is, I believe his title is Director of Public Works for the city of Whittier. He's in charge of all the landfills, the recycling, water, all that kind of stuff for Whittier, and has a much better understanding of how environmental systems work together in a community. And he's a great resource. He'll be sharing with us on Saturday morning. And then we'll talk on Saturday afternoon about practical issues, and this will be largely discussion. So this will be where you all can engage, and I hope you engage deeply and profoundly as well. What we won't do. I'm not going to motivate environmentalism with apocalyptic scenarios of global warming. I'm not going to show you pictures of drowning polar bears, cute as they may be. I'm not going to show you pictures of growing desertification caused by global warming. I'm not going to show you pictures of greenhouse gases emitted from smokestacks. I'm not going to show you graphs and charts and maps about global warming. I'm not going to look at the political protests. Oh, come on, that should get a laugh. On the other hand, I'm not going to reject the notion of creation care as politically motivated, a bunch of lies and hoaxes, a bunch of special interest lobbying. I'm not going to talk about the global warming swindle or suggest that global warming is a myth. I'm not going to say it's all caused because of the solar cycles. So we're going to stay away from that stuff. I have beliefs about that, but I think that once we understand a biblical theology of the human and the human's place in creation, it doesn't matter if global warming is true or not. We still have responsibilities. You'll find that I throw in poetry every now and then. Poetry, of course, is a language of love and the language of epics. And it's no wonder, I think, that many authors, many writers on nature, on environmental subjects, become poetic from time to time because of their love for the natural world and because the interaction with the natural world is an epic thing. But poetry is often the language of worship. And it seems to me that if we understand worship as a total response of the total creature to the Creator, that some of our worship is going to involve our attitudes and our actions towards the natural world. Not all the poetry that I'm going to cite is Christian by any means, but it's suggestive. Okay? Shakespeare wrote this, and this, our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.